What's up, everyone? I'm JB from RetroGameTCG, and look, today I want to talk about something that never ever really makes those flashy top 10 lists or market recaps. I want to talk about how Pokemon, or any TCG for that fact, quietly teaches you patience, whether you're actually ready to learn it or not. So let's be real for a second. We're living in 2026. Everything is fast. We've got instant streaming, overnight delivery, social feeds that refresh faster than we can even blink. And we've basically been trained to think that if something isn't happening right now, then something's wrong. Patience is one of those things that everyone says they want, kind of like a virtue that you would put on a resume. But almost nobody actually enjoys the process of practicing patience, because it's uncomfortable. It feels like friction. And the thing about Pokemon in any TCG, like I said, is it doesn't ask for your permission to be patient. It doesn't give you a choice. It just drops you into situations where being impatient has very real consequences. Now, sometimes those consequences are small, like you may miss out on a cool card, but sometimes they're very expensive. You lose a massive amount of money chasing some form of hype train. Sometimes they're emotional. You even may end up burnt out and bitter towards the hobby that you used to love, all because of impatience. Whether you're a collector finishing a set, a seller growing a business like I am here at Retro Game TCG, or a player just mastering a deck, you are constantly in a corner where you have to decide, do I react right this second? Or do I slow down and actually think? Now, over time, these decisions, they start shaping more than just your collection. They shape how you handle frustration the rest of your life. So let's talk about why the wait is actually the most valuable part of this entire hobby. The first thing to realize is that in this world, you're almost always waiting for something. You're waiting for the next set to drop. You're checking tracking numbers 4 to 5 times a day. You're waiting for prices to finally stop being so crazy so you can buy your chase card. You're waiting for that one eBay buyer to finally pay, or for a trade offer that actually makes sense. There's no fast forward button in the TCG world. You can't grind for the XP to make the mail move faster. You can't force the market to behave. Early on, that waiting can feel incredibly annoying, especially if you're used to that instant feedback loop of video games and digital media. When we're new, we think the wait is a negative signal. We think that we're falling behind, or that everyone else is getting hits while we're stuck with nothing. But the longer I run Retro Game TCG, the more I've realized that waiting isn't dead time, it's calibration time. Pokemon quietly asks you a very difficult question. Can you stay engaged with this hobby without an immediate reward? Can you still love Pokemon on the weeks when you don't buy anything? Can you find value here when you haven't had a big hit in a month? That question shows up everywhere. In your career, your fitness goals, your relationships. Pokemon just gives you a safe, low-stakes place to realize that not yet doesn't mean never. Another lesson that comes through the consequences, and usually in this hobby, those consequences have a dollar sign attached to them. Impatience has a very specific look. It's overpaying for a card during that pre-release hype because you're absolutely terrified that the price will never go down. It's panic selling your whole entire collection because the market dipped for a week and now you're scared it's going to zero. It's ripping through an entire booster box in 3 minutes. Trust me, I've been there. Not because you're enjoying the art, but because you're desperate for just a hit to justify the cost. Now look, impatience isn't a moral failure. It's just a human reaction to discomfort. We act because acting feels better than sitting still. But have you noticed that those impulsive decisions are almost always the ones that we regret 6 months later? The card I waited for 4 months to buy at the right price, I still love it. But that hype card I bought the day it released because I felt like I needed it, it's probably worth 40% less now, and the memory of buying it is tied to some form of stress, not joy. Patience doesn't mean doing nothing. It just means choosing not to act just to relive your own discomfort. If you can't sit with that itch and not scratch it, you're usually going to end up with a better collection and a healthier bank account. Here's the deeper layer. Patience isn't really about time. It's about an emotion. When something doesn't go your way, like a dead box or a sale that falls through, what you're really managing is your reaction to disappointment. We live in a world that tries to fix disappointment immediately. We want to buy our way out of a bad mood, but Pokemon, or like I said, TCGs in general, they don't let you do that easily. It asks if you can tolerate the uncertainty of a grading return, or the frustration of a losing streak. The reason this matters is because these skills, sitting with uncertainty, doesn't just apply to cardboard. They show up in how you handle a tough day at work, or when your car breaks down, or even when a relationship gets complicated. If you can stay calm when you pull your third duplicate double rare instead of your chase card, you're building the muscles of resilience. You're learning that disappointment is survivable. And that's a heavy-duty life skill practiced in a colorful, low-stakes sandbox. I've found that patience feels a lot easier when you actually know why you're waiting. If you don't have a direction, patience is just stagnation, like the world is just passing you by. But when you have a long-term vision, patience starts to feel like an investment. When you know what you're actually building and what enough actually looks like, the wait stops feeling like a punishment. Maybe that means letting a collection grow slowly over years instead of trying to just master set it in a single weekend. Maybe it means holding inventory because you know the value is there, even if the spikes are happening somewhere else. The same action, waiting, feels completely different when it's connected to an intention. Without intention, you're just a person stuck in traffic. But with intention, you're a person on a journey who knows that the traffic is just part of the road. Now, hey, ask yourself, what does my collection look like in 10 years from now? If you can answer that, today's slow day may not feel so bad. One of the absolute truths about Pokemon is this. The hobby doesn't reward the fastest people. It rewards the steadier ones. The people who have been here for 20 years and the ones who truly enjoy their collections. They aren't usually the loudest or the fastest. They're the ones who are consistent and they're comfortable with slow progress. And they don't let a hype cycle bankrupt them. They don't panic when a YouTuber tells them that the hobby is dying. They treat mistakes as data, not disasters, and they aren't immune to frustration. Trust me, I get it. I get frustrated all the time. They just don't let that frustration dictate their next move. They have a steady hand, is what some people call it. That steadiness, it compounds. It doesn't look dramatic on a TikTok clip, but it's an incredibly reliable skill. If you can stay steady when everyone else is panicking, you will eventually find yourself in a very strong position, both in your collection and in your mindset. Pokemon doesn't teach patience by lecturing you. It's not a textbook. It teaches it by putting you in moments where impatience is tempting, and then letting you feel the outcome for better or worse. Over time, you start learning the most important lesson this hobby has to offer. You learn that when to act, and you learn when to wait, and you also learn that sometimes waiting is the most powerful action you can take. That lesson shows up everywhere. In your finances, your career, and your biggest life goals. So, the next time you're frustrated because a package is late, or a pull was bad, or even a sale is slow, let's take a breath. Remind yourself that you aren't just waiting, you're practicing. You're building the vision of yourself that can handle the long game. And yeah, this applies to Pokemon, but it applies to a lot more than that. If this helps you look at the slow days a little differently, feel free to hit a like. It really helps the channel grow. But if you disagree, if you think speed is the only way to win in 2026, hey, hit a dislike. Let's fight about it in the comments. Just kidding. I do love the different perspectives in this community, and I truly look forward to them. If you want to keep exploring the deeper side of the TCG with me, the ins and outs, the psychology, and the mindset behind the why, please consider subscribing. I'm JB. This is RetroGameTCG. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me today. I'll see you in the next one.